All right. 3, 2, 1. Can't do it. All right, Amplify students, welcome to YouTube, Amplify Online. Oh man, what a week, right? It's been crazy, it's been different, it's kind of nutty, but you know what? It's Thursday night. I hope that you are sitting here with us right now watching this. If you come later, that's great as well. But I'm glad you're here. We're going to try to make this as normal as possible on Thursday night. So first of all, I want to welcome you to Amplify Student Ministry. If this is your first time, parents, go ahead and fill out an information form. Get it? Because you're parents, you've never been before? Okay. Anyways, so what we're going to do now is I want you to do me a favor. While you're sitting there on your computer, I want you to open up a new tab. All right. Type in YouTube. All right. Perfect. And then I want you to type in, "Great are you, Lord." All right. If you wanted the easier way, there's a link in this in the comments below. What we're going to do is we're going to go to worship. And so what you're going to do is pause my video for a little bit, and I want you to just kind of go ahead and get your mind set up. So let's go ahead and let's worship together. And I want to hear you singing all the way from here on the computer. So take a few moments, listen to that song, worship, and then we'll be right back. All right. Man, isn't that great that we can still worship God wherever we are? It doesn't have to be together. It doesn't have to be front near the stage. I really do hope that you went ahead and did that and worship and spent time and kind of getting your mind right for tonight. So here's the deal. We're going to treat this just like a normal Thursday. You know, there's been a lot of people that have changed their messages and brought something new, which is nothing bad, but we want to continue doing exactly what we've been doing. So for those that are tuning in for the very first time, we're walking through the book of John. And so we are in the second part of John chapter 7, and this is where we're going to be. And so we're going to hang out here for the rest of this time. And then students, just so you know, we are working with your leaders to get you connected. I believe the way we're going to go is through Zoom. Some of you have used that for your school, but we will be small grouping in the Zoom app, and so we will get you connected with that soon. So let's go ahead and open up John chapter 7, starting with verse 25. All right? John chapter 7, verse 25. And so we're picking up kind of where we left off last week, and it says this: "Some of the people of Jerusalem therefore said, 'Is not this the man whom they seek to kill? It is not the man whom they seek to kill, and here he is speaking openly, and they say nothing to him. Can it be that the authorities really know that this is the Christ? But we know where this man comes from, and when the Christ appears, no one will know where he comes from.' So Jesus proclaimed as he taught in the temple, 'You know me, and you know where I come from, but I have not come of my own accord. He who sent me is true, and him do you not know? I know him, for I come from him, and he sent me.' So they were seeking to arrest him, but no one laid a hand on him, because his hour had not yet come. Yet many of the people believed in him. They said, 'When the Christ appears, will he do more signs than this man has done?'" So here's where we are. We're back into this, and so many of the Jewish people were trying to piece together this puzzle of who Jesus was. Who is he? Maybe it's possible he is the Messiah. Maybe he's the one God promised long ago through Moses and the prophets. Could he really be the one? The question of Jesus' identity fills this chapter. We've talked about this for quite some time, chapter 6, and now even in chapter 7. We're asking this: who is Jesus? And so everyone seems to have their own opinion. While others believe he's the Messiah, some think that he's just a good man. Others say he's a deceiver. Some think he's demon-possessed, while others believe that he is the Messiah. So the question they are asking, is Jesus the Messiah? And that's the question of this entire gospel that we've been talking about through John. And the answer is clear when we consider looking at what Jesus said in chapter 6 and now what we're looking at in chapter 7. But if we go back a little bit and we'll just kind of like catch up a little bit and kind of look at some comparison stuff here, we can see in chapter 6, it started with Jesus, feeding the 5,000. It was a miracle. He fed the 5,000 with bread, all right? And so the next Jesus' miracle, he crossed the sea. He walked on water. And on the other side of the sea, he talked about Moses and the manna and the new covenant. And he talked about all of these things. And then when he started talking about it, the people didn't like what he had to say. And they began to grumble and they complained. And many turned and walked away in unbelief. And if you think about it, it sounds very familiar. See, in Exodus, God brought the children of Israel out of Egypt. And into the wilderness, and then while there, he fed them with his bread from heaven, called manna. And to get to the wilderness, he parted the Red Sea. He performed a miracle. God did perform a miracle, and he parted the Red Sea so they could cross. While in the wilderness, he delivered to Moses the old covenant. The people began to grumble and complain. See the similarities here? And by the time they made it to the promised land, the nation turned and walked away in unbelief. Sounds very similar, right? See, the same people that was following Moses, they were unwilling to follow God and his chosen leader into the land of promise. And then so John 7 continues this. He continues this theme. The setting is the Festival of Booths. We started this last week, and then so the purpose of the festival was to remind the Israelites and their descendants that God brought them out of Egypt. God provided for his people when they were on their way to the promised land. Here's the ironic part. The time of Israel's wandering, when God was meeting their needs in the wilderness, was characterized by grumbling and complaining and unbelief. Centuries later, we find the Jews celebrating God's salvation from Egypt and the way he provided for them. Jesus comes into town during this celebration and reveals himself as the greater Moses, as the ultimate provision of God, sent to bring salvation to God's people. But this time, will they believe him? And we've noticed as a theme, and it's a continuous, that there are still people that see this, that hear this, that know the Old Testament, that know what happened with Moses, and they still are not believing. And I can't help but look at this scripture today and think about Exodus and even in today's passage and look at where we are today. We've never been in a situation like this. And if we're honest, we're kind of wandering. We're wandering around like lost sheep. We're stuck in an area that we've never been. We're isolated, And for some of you, you're upset. You're complaining, you're grumbling, you're mad because you can't go nowhere. There is no entertainment. Everything's shut down. For some of you, you're seniors in high school. This is your year. This is supposed to be your best year of high school, your graduation. For some of you, you don't even know what's going to be the future holds. We're in an area of the unknown. And we have no idea how long this is going to last. We don't know how long we're going to be in this time. But here's what I do know. God is always in control. God has never let his people down. And so we have to stay connected. We have to stay focused. And here's the thing. Maybe we have to do stuff we've never done before. And we have to trust God with everything. Because when we do that, I promise that he will provide. He always has and he always will. And we will be fine. And so I know that you're upset. I know that you're mad and I know that you're complaining. But just hold on. I promise you that God will never fail us. And we will get out of this sooner or later. But let's just keep reading in John. So we're in John 7, going on to verses 32. And so the Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these things about him. And the chief priests and Pharisees sent officers to arrest him. Jesus then said, I will be with you a little longer, and then I am going to him who sent me. You will seek me, and you will not find me. Where I am, you cannot come. The Jews said to one another, where does this man intend to go? That we will not find him. Does he intend to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? what does he mean by saying, you will seek me and you will not find me? And where I am, you cannot come. So the Pharisees really do not like Jesus. In fact, they wanted to kill him. They were mad because to be honest, he was honest with them. He called them out. He called them out on their hypocrisy. He called them out on all of the things that they were doing wrong. And he wasn't afraid to do that. See, everyone else was kind of afraid, and they looked up to these Jewish religious leaders, but Jesus didn't. And that's what made them mad. Everyone in Jerusalem is talking about Jesus. People are whispering about Jesus. So Jesus is being talked about. Some in a good way, some in a bad way. But he is being talked about. And they are afraid to speak publicly about him because they don't want to suffer the wrath of the Pharisees. The Pharisees had threatened them. They had told them that they were outcasting them from the temples. They were kind of like excommunicating them and all of this. And so in verse 32 said that the crowd was whispering this thing. And what was this thing? They were wondering if Jesus could possibly be the Messiah. Everything he said and did pointed to him being the one sent by God to defeat sin, to rescue his people from death. So imagine this crowd. They're talking about him. They think that he is the Messiah. And so they're walking through Jerusalem saying, could this really be the Messiah? They're whispering, could this be the Messiah? Could this be the Messiah? Like they're whispering. And every time a Pharisee walked by, they looked down and became quiet. It was like nothing. They weren't talking about anything. It's kind of like for those that drive, and if we're honest, we probably all do this, probably more than others, but you're driving, let's say you're texting, which is illegal, parents and students, that you're texting, and all of a sudden you see that cop drive by, or you got your phone, and you're like, yeah, right? This is what's going on. They're whispering, they're talking about Jesus, but the moment that they saw a Pharisee, everything was quiet. And so they didn't talk about him. They were scared. And so then this keeps going on. But before Jesus invites the crowd to come to him, he warns them. He's giving them this warning. And he's saying that they must make a decision. He will be leaving soon to return to his Father. Things are going to change in this time. They can't wait to decide whether to come to him, either now or never. And so the crowd never gets what Jesus is saying. The crowd responds with confusion, which we've talked about this from almost the whole book of John, that every time that Jesus is speaking in some type of a spiritual way, the crowd thinks of like a human way. Like we've seen this over and over. And so it doesn't surprise us that the crowd never gets what Jesus is actually saying. They don't understand what Jesus means about leaving. They literally question him like, well, where are you going, Jesus? Are you going to live with the Greeks? Where are you going? And it's funny because the inclusion about the Greeks seemed kind of pointless. But it's actually included because it's foreshadowing. See, after Jesus dies, buried, and then rises again, he teaches the disciples for 40 days before he ascends into heaven. And once he leaves, his disciples begin to tell people about Jesus, and then after that, they come under this persecution, and then they are actually dispersed. And they go, and a lot of them go outside of Jerusalem and start telling people, the Greeks, about Jesus. And eventually this message of Jesus is spread across the entire world. And that's the cool part about this story and about Jesus is like literally the message of Jesus is for everyone. It's not just for the Jews. It's not just for me. It's literally for everybody. And so this is what he's wanting to do. And so he's warning them that I'm about to leave and you're not going to be able to have this relationship with me here on earth. And he's telling them, you need to seek after me. You need me. I'm here for this. And so he warns them. And then he goes on in verse 37. He says this, on the last day of the feast, the great day, Jesus stood up and he cried out, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. Now this, he said, about the Spirit, whom those who believed in him were to receive, for as yet the Spirit had not been given because Jesus was not yet glorified. So on the last day of the festival, Jesus extends this amazing invitation to the people. And so to understand this invitation about anyone who stirs and let him come to me and drink, and whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. So to understand the scripture, Jesus quoted his statement of streams of living water will flow from deep within him, points us back to the Old Testament, to the book of Isaiah. And see, the first 39 chapters of Isaiah actually talks mainly about judgment of Judea and judgment on Judea and Jerusalem and on the nations surrounding Israel, and even some more judgment on the entire world. Though there are many glimpses of hope in those first 39 chapters, the book of Isaiah takes a turn in chapter 40. Instead of judgment, we find promises of salvation that dominates the remaining 26 chapters, which centers on someone called the servant. And so if you read Isaiah and you read through the book, by the time you read chapter 55, the chapter that Jesus is referring to in John 7, you will know that God will send the servant, who is God, to save his people from judgment. But look at the two invitations. Look how similar they are. Now remember, this is like hundreds of years apart. If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. That's John 7:37. And then Isaiah 55:1 says this, come, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. Very similar, very, very right there on it. And so Jesus, the Messiah, the servant, the Son of God, invites thirsty people to come to him and drink. We as Americans really don't understand this invitation. We are spoiled by our unlimited selection of drinks that we have. Well, to be honest, right now we are in a shortage of water. You can't find water anywhere. Does anybody have water by chance? No? Yes? You. All right. Call me after this, and so I can get some water. I'm just kidding. But we have this unlimited selection of drinks that we have. When Jesus says he will give the thirsty water, we must understand the gravity of this situation. Remember, he is saying this on the final day of the festival. The festival is remembering the time in Israel's history when they were stuck in the desert. So those who are thirsty in a desert, they're dying. Like there is no water. If you're thirsty in a desert and you have no water, you are going to die. Let's be honest. And so this is why so many of the miracles during that time of Israel's wandering in the desert had to do with water. And if you remember, Moses striking a rock and water pouring out of it. Moses was commanded to speak to a rock so water would come out. And then God providing water in the midst of the desert. It's all throughout Scripture in the Old Testament when they were wandering. And so that's why it talks a lot about water. And so, see, in a desert, water means life. In a desert, if you are thirsty, you are dying. Do you see what John is doing here? Do you see the picture he is painting? Do you see what Jesus is doing? He is trying to give us life. Jesus is inviting the dying to come to him. We are all dying, so what can we do about it? Jesus invites the dying to come to him. The one in the desert with his strength fading and his hope running out, when he hears the promise of water, he knows that that is his only hope. For us, our only hope in living is Jesus. Only Jesus can give you water. Jesus is the only one that can give you life. But look at what Jesus promises. Not only will he give you a drink, but he will put a river of water in your heart. To those in the desert, a cup of water is great. But a river of water changes everything. It changes their life. It guarantees life. And he says, in effect, if you are dying, which we all are, come to me. Not only will I give you life, but I will put my spirit inside of you so that you will always have life. My spirit inside of you will become a river of unending life. The Spirit will be a river of water inside you, and no desert or no drought can cause it to run dry. See, water to the thirsty, life to the dying, Jesus is all of this and more. So the greatest part of all of this, and we talk about that Jesus is life and he's given us life, and and water and the thirsty. He's given water to the thirsty. The greatest part of all of this is that it's free. It's for anyone and everyone. It doesn't matter your past. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter where you are in your relationship with Him. Him giving you life is free. It is something that you don't have to clean up and then come to Him. You don't have to do something to get to Him. Like literally, it is free. He has given it to you with no questions asked. And that's the greatest part of this. And as we finish this chapter 7, my question is this: do you believe what he is saying is true? And so we're going to finish these last couple of verses, and then I'll leave you with a challenge, and we'll go from there. So when they heard these words, some of the people said, "This really is the prophet? This really is the prophet." Others said, "This is the Christ." But some said, "Is this the Christ who came to come from Galilee? Has not the Scripture said that the Christ comes from the offspring of David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David was?" So there was a division among the people over him. Some of them wanted to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him. The officers then came to the chief priests and Pharisees, who said to them, "Why did you not bring him?" The officers answered, "No one ever spoke like this man." The Pharisees answered them, "Have you also been deceived? Have any of the authorities or the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd that does not know the law is accursed." Nicodemus, who has gone to him before, and who one of them said to them, sorry, I can't read apparently. "Does our law judge a man without first giving him a hearing and learning what he does?" They replied, "Are you from Galilee too? Search and see that no prophet arises from Galilee." And so the question is do you believe in Jesus? And the rest of this chapter asks this question. If you believe he's God, if you believe he's the only source of life, if you believe he will give you his Spirit, if you believe he loves you, if you believe he's gracious and merciful, if you believe he is the fulfillment of all God's promises, then you will come to him. If not, you won't. Like if you don't believe in all that, you won't come. But I'm asking you, if you believe that, have you fully come to him? Do you fully surrender your life to him? Same thing happens in this passage. Some believe, some of even the officers, they were questioning this. The unbiased saw something different in Jesus. I love their response in this. In a way, this is what they said. Pretty much they were like, "Have you heard him speak? No one is like this man. There's no one like him." But for some reason, the Pharisees had decided, and no amount of evidence would change their mind. They had chosen not to believe because they didn't want to believe. Their unbelief was rooted in an unwillingness to discern the truth. And so here's the thing. Scripture lays it out for us. We have to choose to believe it or not. Jesus has given us this invitation to come to him, whether we're perfectly fine or we're coming either weary and broken, we can come thirsty and dying. And he says, "Come to me and I will give you life." Guys, I know that this is what the Gospel of John is telling us. We've talked a lot about really fully surrendering and really giving our life to Christ and knowing who Jesus is. But this is what John's given us. He continues chapter after chapter pointing us who Jesus really is and what he's actually done to do, what he's called us to do, and what he was put on earth to do. And it is to give us life. And so I challenge you, do you believe this? And it's easy to, just like the Jews back earlier in this chapter, they were scared to talk about Jesus. And I challenge you in this time of isolation, don't be afraid to talk. Don't be afraid to reach out to people you've never talked to and tell them about this Jesus that you know, that you read about, that has come to our earth to save us, that has given us life. I hope that you have found life in Jesus. If you haven't, reach out to me, reach out to your small group leaders, reach out to someone and really ask, like, hey, what does it mean to have life in Jesus? Amplify students and families, I want to say thank you for joining me on our first ever Amplify Online YouTube video. I hope that you were encouraged. I hope that you found something that you've never heard from the scripture before. Join us next week on YouTube, maybe live next week. I don't know. We're still trying to figure all this out. But join us next week as we start chapter 8, which is one of my favorite chapters in John. And so I'm really excited about that. If you're still around and you haven't tuned us out, come back to Amplify Instagram live. We're getting ready to go live to pick a winner of the prize. If you're watching this not on March 19th around 6:30, this will not affect you. But if you are right now, go ahead, go to Amplify Instagram live. We will be with you shortly for the drawing of a grand prize. I can't wait to give that out. All right, thank you so much. We love you. God bless.